Hey, thanks for joining Community Forum. I'm Jennifer Scott. I'm your guest host for this evening. And we have with us today Melanie Saluka from Red Ink. We're going to talk about job search in the 2011 market, which is a very, very different practice from job search several years ago. So, Melanie, tell us about yourself.
I do job interview coaching. I do resume writing. I started the business from the perspective of a hiring manager. I was the one who was reading the resumes. I was writing the job descriptions, interviewing candidates, bringing them in, making the final decision, pleading with my boss, or trying to convince my boss to not hire someone. So I've been on the other side of the table. And I realize that that's really the perspective that job seekers need. They need to understand what goes on from the employer side and how they can best connect with the two of them.
It's absolutely such an important skill to have that most job seekers don't have the luxury of being accustomed to or really even have it as a possibility for them. Mm-hmm. And you answered that question really well. I understand also being a recruiter that that's the hardest thing for a job seeker to answer, the tell me about yourself question.
Every time I speak to groups, a hush comes over the group whenever it says, okay, the worst question you ever have is tell me about yourself. And everybody says, oh, I hate that question. I don't know how to answer it. And the real truth of it is, just like you asked me the question just to get me to open up, just to get me to start talking, it has the same instance in a job interview situation. It really serves the same purpose.
Is there something a job seeker should focus on when they're answering the tell me about yourself question?
The whole process of looking for a job, from the minute that you look to apply online and send in your resume and do your cover letter, to when you get into the company to do your interview, it's all about how you fit with the employer. They have put out their job description, which is in essence an RFP, a request for proposal. They're outlining what they want, what their perfect candidate has, all their qualifications. You just need to match that. So the tell me about yourself answer is really the way you want to highlight the ways that you fit with that mold. You know what they're looking for. What are the top things in your experience that are going to resonate with them? And I tell job seekers to kind of think of it like a movie promo, where, if you go to the movies, you'll see the highlights of the upcoming movies coming up.
The trailer.
The trailers. And you see the trailer and you think, oh, I love that scene because, oh, wow, that blows up. And your husband is like, oh, we got to see it because that big thing blows up. And there's a romance scene and there's a chase. And you think, wow, that looks like it's a good movie. So they show you little snippets of the movie that you want to see more of. It's the same thing with answering tell me about yourself. You really kind of structure it so that you give the interviewer really what's relevant for them, and you give them little snippets of your experience that they can then ask you further questions about, just like you're going to do.
So the relevant for them part really resonates with me. It's almost like you're telling the prospective employer what's in it for them if they hire you.
Exactly. It's making the connections as clear as possible. I recommend that all job seekers say, I read in the job description, it looks like you're looking for someone who has experience with this. In my last job, I did something very similar, and I did this. Make those connections as clear as possible. So even saying those joining phrases of, I did something very similar, it sounds a lot like what I did in my last job, just kind of repeating that theme throughout the interview makes the interviewer and the recruiter feel more confident that you've done that same thing before, so it's going to be a piece of cake for you to come into this company and do the same thing here.
So to really show how you're a fit for that job based on your past experience. So we've jumped ahead a lot to the interview. How do you get the interview? How does someone get lucky enough to be interviewed so that they can have all this great stuff to talk about?
It's the best way is to look at the job description and then have the resume fit the job description. A lot of employers, a lot of job seekers, they panic and they say, do I have to do a separate resume and cover letter for every job? Because that's just going to take me forever. And I get that. I get that it's a very labor-intensive process, and it can actually delay the timing that you use to apply for the position. So I get that. But what I recommend people do is take the last 10 job descriptions that you've applied for. Now, the other scary thing that I'm hearing, and prepare yourself because this is really terrifying, I've said this to groups and people say, I don't save the job descriptions because really it's piling up and there's too many of them and it's depressing.
You're right, that's scary.
Yeah, isn't that? It's horrifying. And I said, oh, sweet heavens. Okay, well, here's what you do. You copy and paste the job description from online into one big document. That way you have no idea how many jobs you've applied for. It's not like you're keeping that mental tally that can start to really wear on you. But you still have the information there later if you need it. So again, go back through those top 10 jobs, the last 10 jobs you applied for. Look for common themes, look for common descriptions, look for common terminology, and then really kind of dig down and say, you know what, this is very similar to what I did here. Is that coming through? Have a job search buddy. Trade resumes, trade job descriptions, and really dig in, and then provide each other advice and say, you know what, I have no idea why you applied for this job.
So I've heard a lot of job seekers talk about, it used to be if you had 8 out of the 10 requirements in a job description, you could feel pretty confident about applying for that job. Mm-hmm. And that was how it was. Mm-hmm. And now I hear job seekers talking about, well, you need 13 out of the 10 requirements, and they don't even tell you what the last 3 are. Mm-hmm. What do you recommend for a job seeker in that kind of scenario, in this kind of market, when there are more than 5 job seekers applying to every open job? What do you recommend to them at this time?
That it is really tough. It's so much more competitive in the market. And employers feel like they have the right to do that. They feel like they have the right to say, I want everything that's on there because there's so many people unemployed. I should be able to find exactly what I want. But they pay a price for it, by the time they go through the search. So from a job seeker's perspective, number one, take a look at the description and see really read it through and understand the type of person that they're looking for. And don't get so focused on the minutia of every single bullet point. Because as you as I know, those job descriptions are put together by committee. And some cases there's really good people on that committee, and some cases there's somebody with a unique perspective, shall we call it, that has their little thing that they want in that candidate. And it can go in there, but so if you read a job description and there's something in there that just kind of hits you out of left field, but you fit everything else, and when you read the description, and if you were to describe the job description to a friend, you could describe it in ways that really make sense. And then 1 or 2 bullet points that don't fit, you got to say, you know what, overall, I think the essence of the person that they're looking for is really this direction. I fit that essence. I'm going to apply for it. I'm not going to put as much weight on these 1 or 2 things that they're looking for, unless the job description says candidate must have. Right. A must have is exactly that.
It's a deal breaker.
It's a deal breaker. It's a game over. Thanks for playing.
So I hear you talking a lot about asking a friend, asking for advice, asking for help. I've heard that it takes a village. They say it takes a village to raise a child, but I feel like it might take a village to find a job. How do you feel about that?
I really think it does. I think looking for a job is very isolating. People are used to working in departments. They're used to working for companies. If people wanted to be an entrepreneur and work on their own, then they would be an entrepreneur and work on their own. But the job search process has forced everyone to become entrepreneurs, to have to be self-motivated, to do their own research, to become experts. And, as you and I know, people who are experts at their job are not experts in the job search.
Right.
It's a whole different skill set. So people shouldn't feel bad for not doing well in the job search. It's a whole different animal.
And the job search today isn't the same as the job search was 5 years ago. So let's actually talk about the job search process. Mm-hmm. How much time do you recommend a job seeker research certain positions or research certain companies as part of a full career campaign?
It's hard to give it a certain amount of time. I would say probably at least a day a week. Go to the local library, sit with a librarian. The libraries have access to databases that you don't have online. So don't think sitting at home and Googling is really going to give you everything that you need. Look for the size of companies, the type of industries you want to work for, the geographic area, how far are you willing to drive. And librarians can help you narrow down that search within a certain radius by helping you use those database tools that they have at their disposal. But spend at least a day a week to identify what your target list is, because you can have a whole list of them and you're going to be completely overwhelmed. So, kind of start small. Get a grip on it, research those companies, see if there's any traction, see if you know anybody that works there or if somebody knows somebody else who works there.
So networking,
Yes.
then, would be a huge component of this.
Huge.
You hear from CEOs, executives, Fortune executives all the time, how did you get that job? Oh, I knew someone. Or how did you land that position? Or how did you get that great big deal? Oh, I knew someone.
Mm-hmm.
How important do you think networking is to a job seeker?
Networking is really important because it uncovers those kind of the hidden job market or the positions that someone has heard about opening, or somebody kind of has an inside track that something's going to happen or someone's going on maternity leave, things like that start to be little shifts in a company. There's so many businesses in Connecticut that it's hard to keep, you can't keep track of all of them. You can't keep track of all the needs of different ones.
And I've heard that there was a recent Department of Labor statistic that said 80% of jobs actually go unadvertised. Have you heard that? Have your clients experienced that?
I haven't heard that statistic. I didn't realize it was that high, but I know that I know that I've been a part of that. I know that I've heard of a job that's open. I've been able to either post it on my website, I've sent it out to my clients, my prospects. So I've been part of that chain. It definitely helps, and it's because I'm well networked in my community and I know people, and people know to kind of send me jobs to find good candidates. So you want to be that hub. You want to be in the know.
And the whole social networking online component, we've sort of reached a tipping point of mass adoption with this online social media. Mm-hmm. How important do you think something like LinkedIn or Facebook or Twitter, how important is that to a job search today?
They're great ways to meet people online, but then to continue the conversation offline. So it's a great way to connect with people that you normally wouldn't run across in your normal day-to-day interaction, but then you're able to take them offline. So for example, I was working with a client this morning and doing the resume interview with him, and I said, I have a client I worked with 6 months ago. Let's take a look at his LinkedIn profile and see if you think he would be a good networking connection for you. And this enabled my current client to see, okay, let's look at his profile. He could kind of get a feel for what his background was and get an understanding of if they play in the same field or not.
So a job seeker can almost do their own due diligence in looking at who their competition might be?
Exactly. That is a great way to use LinkedIn, and a lot of people do not realize that little hidden message that LinkedIn can give you.
So LinkedIn is this online profile, and when I talk to clients of mine, I talk about how important the online presence is in job search or in marketing a business or anything like that. How similar, from your perspective as a resume writer, should an online LinkedIn profile be to a resume?
The LinkedIn profile serves a different purpose almost than a resume. So the LinkedIn profile needs to be concise. It needs to be filled with the keywords that you want to be found.
Can you elaborate on the keyword component?
The keyword concept is, again, derived from the job applications that you're applying for. What is the common keywords that you're seeing? What are the common terminology? What are the things that the employer is probably using to find the candidates that they're looking for? Be smart about it. Game it. If you were sitting on the other side of the desk, how would you hire for this position? And then look in LinkedIn, do a search, and see if you come up. See if those words are in your LinkedIn profile.
So industry-specific keywords, function or job-specific keywords are important so that you can be found by a recruiter or a hiring manager looking for you.
Exactly. It's all about how your profile fits their needs and making it easy for them to find you on there.
Sort of like a resume through an applicant tracking system.
Exactly.
Fabulous.
Exactly.
Fabulous. So when writing resumes, what are the things that you focus on, or what should a job seeker focus on if they were doing their own resume?
Well, one of the biggest challenges I see, or one of the biggest problems I see with a lot of the resumes I come across, is that people are pretty much putting on their job descriptions on the resume and just going with that. The problem with that is that it doesn't give the employer any way to judge if you're better than someone else. That if you have two resumes from applicants who are human resource directors, the job descriptions are going to be pretty much the same, basically.
So a job description isn't a good way to differentiate yourself because anyone in that position would have had a similar job description.
Exactly.
So how do they do it?
You've got to put your accomplishments on there. You've got to put what are the changes that you made, what are the processes that you improved, what did you add to the company that wasn't there before you started. And a lot of people will get freaked out about this because they'll say, well, I'm not in sales, I didn't increase the bottom line, I didn't do anything. Everybody has made a contribution in some part. Everybody has made a change in the way the company runs, improved the filing system, improved the efficiency, brought on a different vendor, investigated different resources, made some suggestions. What did you do that was different than somebody else?
So how did you impact the company? And again, going back to what's in it for them.
Exactly.
If they hire you. All comes full circle.
It really does. It really does.
That's fascinating. What advice would you give to a job seeker who hasn't had to look for a job in 15 years, 20 years? That's such a different world today with the online stuff, with professional resume writers, with coaches. What's the one piece of advice that you wish every job seeker would know?
I can only give one.
You can give two.
Okay. The two things I would say would be to, number one, recognize that you probably need help. You need some kind of advice. So either work with a coach, work with friends, ask for advice from people who, HR directors, everybody knows an HR director or a recruiter who's a friend of theirs, somebody who can give them kind of objective advice on what they're doing in their materials. And the second thing would be to network. Increase the number of people that you know. Get out of the house. Find opportunities to leave, because the worst thing you can do is isolate yourself in the house and only search online and think, well, this is how I'm going to get a job, because that's only a small portion of it. And really, for your mental well-being, you need to get out of the house. And you can go to job seeker groups that are in the area. Those are a good resource. They have good speakers. You can meet people that are kind of in the same boat. But also look for other opportunities to meet people that are currently employed. So Toastmaster groups, associations in the area. If an association is having a meeting and you want to attend, or there's a conference, call them up and see if there's either an opportunity to volunteer or an opportunity to go in for a reduced in-transition discount. You don't know unless you ask.
So I'm hearing a bunch of different really, really good pieces of advice here. Number one, network. Get out of the house. Don't sit behind the computer. As important as that online networking or those online tools might be, you can't stop there.
Exactly.
Okay, great. So you meet someone, you network, you have a cup of coffee, you have a conversation, and hopefully you can share some insight and share some advice, because it really does take a village.
Right, and by network we say make friends. Interesting thing, I spoke at an event a couple weeks ago, and I said, how many people like to network? And maybe
no one.
A third, yeah, exactly.
No one.
Except you and I.
Right.
Maybe a third of the group said yes. And I said, how many people like to make friends? And 90% of the room raised their hands. So that's the procedural shift. You need to think of it as making friends, building relationships, getting to know people. Otherwise, it can feel kind of smarmy and awkward. But if you're really doing it to get to know people, learn more about a different industry, learn more about a different company, it can really help you in the long run.
Networking really is about information share and value share. It's not about asking for help.
No, not
And
at
a lot of people are afraid to ask for help. In this market, do you feel like there's a stigma against being unemployed?
I don't think there is as much anymore. I think probably, a year and a half ago, people were really upset about it. But I think that now the perception has changed. People know that it's tough out there. If people are in transition for a long time, they do need to find something to fill their time. If they're having a gap and they're out of work and they've been out for 3 or 4 months, you've got to do something. You've got to volunteer. You've got to look for other opportunities to do things to kind of close that gap on your resume.
Interesting. So I know job seekers who have been out for a year or going on 2 years in some cases, especially a more senior executive who really is picking a very niche type of role. You say volunteer. How can they do that? What kinds of places can they do that for?
They should, well, first do what they're passionate about, do what they're interested in, but also be kind of strategic about it and look for opportunities where you're going to be able to meet other people. Also use it as an opportunity, don't just get stuck in the back room sorting, the donations that come in, working by yourself, because that's not really going to further your cause. If you can volunteer to work an event, a fundraising event, sit at the front desk, work with a team of people, do things like that that get you to interact with other people and start conversations, you're going to feel more energized, you're going to be giving back to the community, and you're going to have something to show for what you've been doing during the gap.
What about volunteering in your area of expertise? Like a human resources director volunteering for a nonprofit in an HR function. Is that a good idea?
I think that's great. That's fantastic, because you're able to use your powers for good.
That's funny.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
I don't know about my powers, but that's funny.
You're able to really, so a marketing person working for a not-for-profit. Fantastic. I actually worked with one of my clients. I set her up with an event through the Stanford Symphony was having trouble with their database and trying to get it to work. They didn't have anybody who was able to sit down and really analyze it and then give them an instruction book on how to pull the reports that they needed. So I volunteered a client of mine that was her specialty.
That's great.
And she was able to give back and then stay current with her skills as well.
And I think that's so important. How can a job seeker demonstrate, especially someone who's been out of work for a while, how can they demonstrate to a prospective employer that they are staying current and that they are in touch with their field or their area of expertise?
Well, first of all, they should always research. So always, if you can get an online bulletin, a daily e-zine of what's going on in the industry, set up a Google search that feeds you articles every day. Stay current that way, just informationally on what's going on. Look for associations, look for other groups that you can attend those meetings and stay current that way, and put in your face time, as it were, so that people see you around. That's going to help you from a networking / friend-making opportunity. And it just get out, just stay current, and realize really how important that is.
Great. So you've got this great resume, especially if they've hired you to help them write it. They've really been able to articulate their results, their achievements, their accomplishments. They land this fabulous interview. Now, you've given already some great advice about what to say in the interview, but what's that missing step? How do they prepare for that interview? Do you have any advice on interview prep?
Well, they should, again, it's seeing the correlation between the two, and then also clearly describing their experience.
So the correlation between
the job description and their experience.
Okay.
So marrying those two things, so that, again, using those phrases of what you're looking for in this position is very similar to what I did here. I worked with the same types of clients. I marketed to the same types of market.
How do they get that information? How do you have advice to the job seeker who's going into the interview, who needs to understand what to marry themselves to?
Take a look at the company. Go through the company website. Look at profiles of other people at the company on LinkedIn. Look at where they came from, what their background is. Look at the advertising that the company puts out. That'll give you a feel for what their focus is, what the direction is. And talk about it, again, just talk it out with someone. I think a lot of people, working with someone can give you a different perspective, can highlight different areas that you didn't really think of the first time, and can give you a broader perspective of what they're looking for in their ideal candidate.
Okay. And are you available to help job seekers in this kind of transition?
I love doing that. I love working with people on job interview prep. I work with phone interview prep, in-person interview. I write resumes, and also some job search tactics and strategies, helping people get over that networking / friend making hump. You know, how do you approach people? What is an icebreaker? You know, I understand people's reluctance to that, so I really work with them to find a way that makes them comfortable to discuss themselves with others and get out and realize that, you know what, they're fantastic people. Everybody that I work with, everybody that I meet has some really innate core within them that's so interesting. Everybody has really fascinating lives, and I think people really need to bring that out. They need to feel comfortable being who they are and trusting that that is going to draw other people to them, and they're going to increase their network.
Fabulous. How can someone find you? Do you have a website someone can go to look you up?
Yes, my company is Red Inc., and the website is redinc.biz. So it's REDINC.biz.
Not red ink like you're going to mark up their resume?
Not the pen. I know. I get that all the time. It's REDINC, like Red Incorporated. .biz, B-I-Z.
Fabulous, fabulous. Melanie, thank you so much. If you had one more thing that you could impart, grand words of wisdom, to anyone in transition today, what would that be?
You're going to make it. Everyone is going to get a job. I believe that. It's easy to lose that core sense of self, and it's very sad when people lose that, but you've got to have that belief. You've got to say, you know what? I can do this. I'm good. I was good in my last job. I was good in my last 3 jobs. And gosh darn it, I'm going to find my ideal job. I'm going to make it.
Thank you so much. Melanie Saluka, redinc.biz. Look her up. Fabulous resume writer and interview coach. I'm Jennifer Scott. Thank you so much for joining us on Community Forum today. John will be back next week, same time, same place. Yay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good.
It's been a pleasure.
Good. That was great. Yeah. Okay.